consultations. Yet we may get together, build a land where knowledge is free, where the mind is without fear, and the head is held high, and where words comes in the depth of truth. Grant us, O God, thy hidden guidance, so that we may deal justly with the several causes that come before us. Laying aside our private interests, prejudices, and personal preferences, so that the result of our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion, the preservation of justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the President, and the peace and prosperity of Guyana. Grant us, O God, the vision so to lead, that all the people of this fair land may enter into that state of brotherhood and unity, where the mind is like powered by thee into ever-widening thought and action. Thank you. Please be seated. Messages from the President. Announcements by the Speaker.
Honourable members, let me formally acknowledge the appointments of the Honourable Dr. Ashley Kumar Singh as Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance and the public service. Also, congratulations, Dr. Singh. And also the Honourable Minister Sonia Parag, who has been formally appointed as the Minister of Local Government and Regional Development. Congratulations, Honourable Minister Parag. Honourable members, last Monday at the session when the budget speech was delivered by the Honourable Senior Minister, Dr. Ashley Kumar Singh, we had a number of little hiccups which I want to raise once again. First, the precincts of the Parliament and the Parliament chamber fall under the purview of the authority of this chair. And when the chair makes a decision, there's only one way to challenge it, by a formal motion in the House. No other way. And so I intend to stick very steadfast to this rule. I raise another issue. The members of Parliament who come to the House, the Constitution says no one should prevent them from participating in the business of this House. But it is decorum. And so we've had requests from a number of our members of Parliament for coffee and snacks to be brought to them. We won't allow that. So eating is not permitted. If you have a cold and you have to nibble at a mint, I will allow that. Right? But eating is not permitted. For persons who are visiting and members of the media, you're here at the pleasure of the chair. And we've had one incident where I've had to be extremely firm with one person. So let us ensure that we stick to the rules of decorum in the House so that we don't have to deal with these irritants. Personally, I've been very malleable in the chair. You know, I see my good friend to the left, nice colors. The clerk will tell me it might be too bright for the Parliament. And so we dealt with the dress code, but members, let's keep it the way we ought to so that we can deal with a good example from the House. And I've said this before, I said, I don't mind how you do it. You have a bigger audience. Parliament side gets hit by hundreds of thousands of people. So that's what you're playing to. Finally, I want to say to members who are making their presentations, step out of line, I am not going to stop the clock. So if you're going to argue minutes, I will prolong the argument with you, and that way your time gets cut. But if you're interrupted from the other side and I have to take a point of order, I'll stop the clock. But if you step out of line, the clock rolls. Sherlock?
Mr. Speaker, if I'm permitted,
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
while I endorse what you're saying, it is assumed that there will be fairness and even-handedness. I have no problem whatsoever, but there is a penchant in here for objecting to the opposition while government parliament manifests worse than any decorum we can talk about.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. And I will tell you, fairness is a matter of subjectivity. The rule is, or the rule book is the standing orders. That's where we start. And so when we speak of fairness, it is objectivity in the implementation of the standing orders. That's where fairness begins.
Mr. Speaker, you get it right away. You would agree that if it is based on the law, then it is not subjective. It is objective because it is determined by law.
I love this exchange, except to be a good speaker, you have to be a great listener. And so if you listen carefully to what I've said, you would not have made that comment. And I'm not going to entertain another exchange with the Leader of the Opposition on this matter. I said fairness is subjective, full stop. And then I went on to say where we start in this House is the implementation of the standing orders. Sherlock?
Presentation of petitions, presentation of papers and reports, etc.
Honorable Member Minister McCoy, please, watch your language. Don't let me have to ask you to excuse yourself from today's sitting.
Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs.
In the absence of the General at this moment, Mr. Speaker, could I present on his behalf the High Court's rules in regards to the Civil Procedure Amendment Rules?
Honorable
2024.
Minister, I think the rule says he has to have given you the authority. Has he?
Yes, he has.
Thank you.
By
Go ahead.
WhatsApp. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I'd like to present on behalf of the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs the Civil Procedure Amendment Rules 2024, number 1 of 2024. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Some committees, oral questions without notice, questions on notice. Statements by ministers, including policy statements. Personal explanation for leave to move the adjournment of the National Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance. Motions relating to the business of the National Assembly and moved by a minister. Introduction of bills. Public business. Government's business.
Honourable members, the Assembly will resume the debate on the motion for the approval of the estimates of expenditure for the financial year 2024. Our first speaker today is the Honourable Member, Mr. Roysdale Ford, Senior Counsel. Honourable Member, floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this $1.146 trillion budget, touted the biggest budget in the nation's history, is being packaged to fellow Guyanese as staying the course, building prosperity for all. If I was to use one word to describe it, that word would be uninspiring. It is built on shifting sand. Of proper foundation. It lacks philosophical rudder. It fails to articulate a clear and compelling vision. It fails to articulate long-term goals, objectives, or a roadmap for development. It fails to tackle urgent and important social issues. It fails to adequate visitors, education, healthcare, and social welfare. It lacks clear economic and social indicators and measurements for success. It facilitates the disproportionate allocation on concrete projects with $2.214 billion and $2.041 billion for roads and bridges at the expense of human capital development. It failed to engage critical stakeholders and citizens in meaningful consultations. It is simply uninspiring. In fact, the rubric under which these nice-sounding set of words and figures have been assembled, staying the course, building prosperity for all, is really another way of saying more of the same partisan policies that exclude minorities and marginalized groups from the political process, more of the same policies that facilitate and exacerbate social and economic inequities in our society, more of the same policies that allow unsustainable growth and lopsided development in a trickle-down economy, more of the same policies that facilitate structural discrimination and corruption, facilitated by the interplay of partisan politics and uncontrolled, impulsive splurging of oil money by the incumbent government. This side of the House began last Monday to prosecute this budget, to determine whether the PPP has changed its ways, having heard the demands of the parliamentary opposition and other sections of society to be inclusive and to craft a budget that leaves no group or individual behind, or whether it has doubled down on the famous George Orwell's line that all are equal, but some are more equal than others. This budget has fallen short on many fronts. It lacks an inclusive approach in conceptualization, equal and equitable allocation of resources, the hallmarks of good governance, which according to the United Nations has 8 characteristics: participatory, consensus-oriented, accountable, transparent, responsive, effective and efficient, equitable and inclusive, and follows the rule of law. At paragraph 4.187 of the budget speech, the Honorable Member, Dr. Ashni Singh, stated on governance that the government's hallmark has been to consistently embrace democracy, constitutionality, budget as was done. Principle as outlined in Article 13 of the Constitution. Cognizant of this constitutional violation, this side of the House not only condemns the disregard citizens' right to the involvement, but will peruse this budget line by line, taking seriously our constitutional role and the foundational aspirations of our forebears as enshrined in the Constitution and in our preamble to the Constitution, to forge a system of governance that promotes broad-based participation, national decision-making in order to develop a viable economy and a harmonious community based on democratic values, social justice, fundamental human rights, and the rule of law. Leading up to this budget, the government busied itself with what would call a public relations stunt, inviting groups to participate in budget consultation. This, you will recall, Mr. Speaker, was the period when the government was placed under the international spotlight for its discriminatory management. And rather than change course, it set out to deceive. But today I offer a friendly reminder in the words of United States President Abraham Lincoln: you can fool all the people some of the time, and some of the people all the time, but you can never fool all the people all of the time. This does much violence to the spirit and letter of Article 13 of our Constitution. In that context, nearly 50% of our citizens have been excluded from the process, which arrived at decisions which would shape the course and quality of their lives, communities, and nation. This raises serious questions about accountability and governance. This lack of meaningful consultation with those who bear the brunt of fiscal policies is not just a procedural misstep. It is a disconcerting display of weak governance and that disregards the very essence of democracy. A serious disadvantage of sidestepping stakeholders' consultation is the increased risk of misallocation of funds. This lack of insight from those directly affected by budgetary decisions can result in a financial plan that simply fails to address the real needs of the people and hampers the nation's overall progress. Moreover, the absence of meaningful consultation undermines the democratic and good governance principles that should really undermine the budgetary process. Indeed, a budget is not merely a financial document. It is a reflection of the collective aspirations and felt needs of a society. By excluding critical stakeholders, such as community and other leaders, labor organizations, municipalities, town councils, regional democratic councils, representatives of marginalized groups, the government is essentially sidelining the voices that could provide valuable perspectives on how to create a budget that is truly inclusive and responsive to the diverse needs of the population. The groups that met with the government, who took seriously their civic responsibilities to their constituents, got nothing meaningful to improve their quality of lives for the workers, the youths, the pensioners, the ordinary man, ordinary woman and child, and other vulnerable groups who comprise society's majority. The touted $3,000 increase in old age pension and disability pension really in fact amounts to $100 or less a day. In Guyana, you can buy nothing for $100. Raising the tax threshold by $15,000, which represents a 15% increase, means nothing to workers because over the last year, the cost of living has risen exponentially. This budget means nothing to those earning below $100,000. In an oil-rich economy where the national minimum wage has remained stagnant at a miserly sum of $86,150 per month, nothing was heard about ensuring the viability of the national insurance scheme as fair amounts as to whether this scheme will be around for future generations. By budget 2024 tells us that inflation was a mere 2% last year. Incredibly, with a contemplated massive 27% increase in government expenditure this year, relative to last year's revised expenditure, inflation is expected to increase marginally to 2.5% this year. The Economic Survey of Latin America and the Caribbean 2023 puts inflation in the United States and the United Kingdom at 4.4 and 6.8% respectively in 2003, and projects that it will be 2.8 and 3.0 respectively in 2004. Simply put, Mr. Speaker, the government's figures cannot be trusted. And if you want to measure the real measure of inflation, ask the ordinary men and women who face the market. For instance, a slice or a cut of pumpkin is being sold for $1,000 and sugar $300 a pound, which was a year ago $200 a slice, and sugar was $80 a pound. Rents have skyrocketed, leaving many families desperate and in need of proper shelter. Just 5 years ago, a two-bedroom house in Georgetown attracted a rent of $60,000. Today, a similar rent is over $120,000. Mr. Speaker, this House is reminded that the AP and UFC government
did more for citizens with less. They did more, we did more for citizens with less. By the time we left office in 2020, we had moved the minimum wage from $39,570 in May 2015 to $70,000 in January 2019. This 77% increase over a short period of time was done without the enormous tax resources that are available to the present government. It was accomplished in the context of a growing economy and inflation that averaged 1% for the period between 2015 and 2020. Quite possibly the lowest inflation to be recorded in any 5-year period in the country's history. It would take far more than the current wage to purchase the same basket of goods and services that were bought with $70,000 in 2019. It is conservatively estimated that in order for Guyanese to enjoy an adequate minimum standard of living, the minimum wage should be $150,000 a month. Mr. Speaker, I'm compelled to ask the Honorable Minister with responsibility for finance a very important question. Is this $1 trillion budget, in facts and figures, the real budget for 2024? I'm not being facetious. The records will show that the past 4 years, this government has returned to this August House again and again for supplementary funds. In 2023, they returned 6 times, totaling more than $900 billion. These supplemental funds represented $900 billion, plus the $782 billion, which was touted to be the largest in the nation's history, giving us a grand total of $1,682,112,890,947. In the realm of fiscal responsibility, the government's penchant for representing budgets only to scurry back to this House to supplementary funds marks not only improper planning, but also places the legislative process in a precarious position. This theater of presentation seems to be a mere prologue to a recurring drama where the true financial narrative unfolds not in the initial grand announcement like we had on January 15 this year, but in the subsequent pleadings for additional allocations. And therefore, the pertinent question that now looms large in the minds of the citizen is which budget is the real one? Mr. Speaker, this sleight of hand, where the government habitually, ritualistically underplays the financial requirements and later seeks supplementary funds, raises serious questions about the credibility of the initial budgetary figures. It leaves citizens and policymakers grappling with a financial sense of disarray, unsure of whether the government's budgetary projections are genuine or mere placeholders, so to speak, for the eventual plea for more money. Does the minister not know that the reliance on supplementary funds not only signals a failure in adequate and accurately forecasting, but also unveils a disturbing lack of strategic planning? It reflects a government that may be either oblivious to the true financial needs of the nation or intentionally downplaying them for optics. In either case, it undermines the very essence of responsible government and prudent financial management. Mr. Speaker, the practice of consistently returning to the House to supplementary funds in a real way transforms the budget process into a preliminary endorsement, leaving parliamentarians and citizens questioning the authenticity of these figures. Understanding democratic governance, Mr. Speaker, the continuous reliance on supplementary funding raises fundamental questions about the transparency and accountability of the budgetary process. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that the citizens of this country deserve a budget that truly reflects the needs of the nation, not a mere prelude to a never-ending quest to supplementary funds. This nonsense must stop. The level of spending, Mr. Speaker, this level of spending could only be as a result of a number of factors which we want to put some reason to. The misuse of funds, improper planning, and certainly, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the PPP, we should not rule out corruption and the fraudulent conversion. Corruption is undisputably...
Okay, we have two issues here. the misuse of funds, you cannot, the standing order says, impute. And second issue, I don't think the last word you use is parliamentary. So let's continue on a good course.
Corruption is undisputably contributed to
And
political.
again, you repeated it. We've ruled on that budget that this is the 5th budget presentation we're going through.
Mr. Speaker, the source of Guyana's $1 trillion budget, the source, Mr. Speaker, of the government $1 trillion budget is the agreement signed by the APNU and Exxon. The government's approach to inclusivity is illustrated in the repealing of the Natural Resource Fund passed by the APNU-AFC. The government removed several safeguards against the abuse of the oil refunds on oil resources accruing to this nation. In the repeal legislation, there was provision for the establishment of a macroeconomic committee to advise on the maximum economically sustainable amount that could be withdrawn from the fund, taking into account past spending from the fund, the potential impact of future spending on Guyana's competitiveness, economic growth, agriculture and manufacturing, the assessment of macroeconomic variables, inflation, exchange rate, balance of payments, and other public debt. The substituted provision provides us for a schedule of annual withdrawals from the fund, thereby dispensing with the need for the exercise of professional judgment by a team of independent experts in advising on the amounts to be withdrawn. Mr. Speaker, the reputable chartered accounting firm Raman McKay, in a recent Starbucks News report, indicts this government's misuse of the people's money, projecting a loss this year of more than $100 billion from ineffectiveness. This firm did not mince words, reminding us that the touted largest budget in history is all for the wrong reasons, as evidenced by the absence of an independent planning authority to oversee the capital budget, which is now $666.1 billion. Mr. Speaker, according to Raman McKay, Guyana will lose in excess of 10% through inefficiencies, which represents more than $100 billion before any supplementary provisions is brought. There is no financial capacity or capability to handle the sums of monies passing through the ministries. The 400 projects, many of which bear questionable names, will not be subjected to any serious evaluation and have the hallmarks of a slush fund. Mr. Speaker, this budget has expanded the opportunities for squandermania, or as the PPP's own Dr. Jagan would say, and I quote, waste, fraud, and abuse, end of quote. Mr. Speaker, assuming that this budget is a real one, Mr. Speaker, the very core of this trickle-down economy to which I refer to is a contentious issue that the government is funneling unprecedented sums to very few at the top by giving handouts to the grassroots. There's public knowledge that there's a massive concentration of wealth among the few privileged persons, leaving the majority to contend with the crumbs that fall from the rich banquet. Even the distribution of cash grants and other assistance to the poor has been marred by irregularities. What happened to the COVID cash grants? When will thousands of citizens be relieved of their pink slips? This is the 5th budget presented by the Honorable Minister. Yet the PPP has not been able to concentrate or demonstrate its ability or genuine commitment to improve the quality of lives of the citizens, let alone talk about prosperity for all. And who is really included in this all? Citizens' lived experiences and realities in local communities have created a sense of exclusion rather than one of ownership and inclusion. Perhaps this is the reason why there's absolutely no public excitement or active interest among the populace in the days leading up and the announcement of the reading of this year's budget. This critical event, the presentation of the nation's budget in the life of our government, has become a farce under this administration. Mr. Speaker, as the government of our oil-rich country parades the grandiosity of its $1 trillion budget, a glaring void emerged. The stark absence of an overarching strategy. Instead of witnessing a visionary roadmap, citizens are left to grapple with a financial behemoth, devoid of clear direction, plunging our nation into a precarious abysses of financial uncertainty. Again, this lack of strategic direction exacerbates the risk of funds being allocated haphazardly without a cohesive plan that prioritizes the most pressing needs of our nation. Mr. Speaker, styling the budget, staying the course, giving the nation's exponential wealth in the hands of a few and growing poverty, we will be in order to question why at this time. Mr. Speaker, the government has no short-term, medium-term, or long-term plan for this nation. Yet we are being told that the policy prescriptions which will be put in place will reduce poverty, improve malnutrition, reduce the rate of high school dropout, stop the nation was the envy of the region for intelligence from lagging behind countries in this region. Budgetary decisions should be grounded in a nuanced understanding of the social fabric, ensuring that resources are directed towards uplifting the most vulnerable rather than exacerbating existing disparities. Mr. Speaker, we continue to see disinvestment in our people. Contrary to Barrett Jaggio's statement, the honorable member at a press conference that there are pockets of poverty in the midst of wealth, poverty is pervasive in Guyana. According to Food for the poverty rate, that is the share of the population living below $5.50 per day, is about 38.8%, which is among the highest in the Caribbean and Latin America. Another startling statistic is the intensity of deprivations in Guyana, which among the NDP is 30.3%. Very little, if anything at all, has been done for human development and human upliftment. Very little has been done in this area. For example, the allocation for the University of Guyana for 2024 is 4.1 billion, but the amount given to the gold project for this year is 4 billion. No report has ever been submitted to this National Assembly on the impact of this program. It is an insult and an abrogation of the duty to make the claim that the University of Guyana must have programs that are accredited in Guyana when the university is a state-owned institution. And it is the responsibility of the government of Guyana to ensure that programs are accredited. This university was founded by Dr. Jagan and expanded by Forbes Burnham. This government seems to have little or no interest in ensuring that the university functions as a 21st century tertiary institution equipped to meet the developmental needs of the people and society. We would like to know who credited the gold programs. The government has failed to invest in the people by instituting free education in accordance with Article 27 of the Constitution. The reality of the circumstances of the quality of life of large sections of the population are as such. 25% of the indigenous children are stunted, a figure higher than the national average. 60% of the newborn indigenous children are born underweight. Children from rural and urban poor families and other marginalized groups suffer from multi-poverty related deprivations. The lack of social protection measures contribute to the cycle of domestic abuse, violence, and neglect. Most vulnerable children belong to already disadvantaged groups, indigenous and tribal peoples, and urban poor. Many children are not acquiring the skills needed for decent employment and limited opportunities for adult participation and engagement. Schools' curricula do not offer 21st century skills. As of 2023, Mr. Speaker, one ought not to be shocked to find that there will be no observable impact on income inequality among the peoples and races in this country. There will be no dent in poverty. 42% of the indigenous people live in poverty. 50% of the Indo-Guyanese live in poverty. 20% of the African Guyanese live in poverty. Mr. Speaker, considering the rule of law, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister presented $1 trillion budget for 2024 and boasted our economy is moving full throttle. He talks about the dizzying pace at which we are delivering a modern Guyana. Yet the leadership of his government has failed miserably to do the basic things to enhance and strengthen the constitutional and legal framework. For example, after 4 years in office, the president is still to initiate consultation under Article 127(1) of the Constitution, which would lead to the appointments of a substantive chancellor of the judiciary and a substantive chief justice. In 2022, Justice Adrian Saunders, president of the Caribbean Court of Justice, called it a notable stain on Guyana's judicial landscape. He called for substantive appointment of a chancellor and chief justice to be made before the year 2022. Mr. Speaker, in the case of Vince Roy Jordan versus the Attorney General, Justice Young granted declarations compelling and requiring that the president must initiate the process of consultation as required by the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, despite the CCJ specifically saying in the case of Air Services Limited against the Attorney General that it is the president and the officials of state who are required to initiate consultation, notwithstanding the declaration by the High Court and the Caribbean Court of Justice exposition of the law that places the president under constitutional duty to initiate this consultation, 10 months have elapsed since the decision without any discharge of the president's constitutional duty to initiate the process of consultation. The failure by the president...
Honorable member, the references to the president with respect to influencing the debate is a non-starter also. So you have to withdraw those.
Mr. Speaker, the failure by the executive, by the government, is now a travesty and a grave and continuing breach of the Constitution. We are in 2024 with $1 trillion budget, but no substantive appointments. These appointments are not a matter of mere force. It's the cornerstone of a well-functioning democracy. The absence of two substantive judicial figures constitutes a serious institutional void, undermining the principles of independent and effective judiciary required for the purpose of upholding the rule of law. Mr. Speaker, the Law Reform Commission was established in 2021. It has been said by the government that you can only reform the law if you're aware of what the law currently is. But strangely, this has seemingly stifled and shaped the law reform process. The Law Reform Commission has not published and or indicated its readiness or interest in receiving from the public any suggestions for law reform. Also, the Law Reform Commission has not announced that it had submitted or identified any program or areas for law reform. Mr. Speaker, the chairman of the Law Reform Commission has indicated that in the 18 purported volumes of the laws of Guyana, and I quote, there were many mistakes, grammatical and typographical, which infected the whole process of law reform. Mr. Speaker, these creeping mistakes occurred as a result of the incompetence of the very current Attorney General in 2022 at the cost of millions of dollars. On the question of legal aid, Mr. Speaker, many of our citizens, especially the poor and vulnerable, do not have access to this vital service. There's little awareness about this aspect of our legal architecture. Mr. Speaker, the opposition envisages a legal aid action plan, a roadmap to ensure the effective provision of legal aid services by the government and other stakeholders based on collaborative and cooperative efforts in legal aid services. It would raise the awareness and ensure the provision of legal right education at the community level. Further, with respect to the Constitution, respect for rule of law, the government has neglected to establish crucial commissions, including the Human Rights Commission, the Tribunal for the Ethnic Relations Commission, the Rights of the Child's Commission, and the Petroleum Commission. Mr. Speaker, the International Inter-American Convention Against Corruption obligates Guyana to create, maintain, and strengthen the system to protect public servants and private citizens in good faith reporting acts of corruption. Mr. Speaker, the Protective Disclosures Act of 2018, which is an important tool against mismanagement, corruption, and unethical behavior, To date, this act has not yet been operationalized by the issuance of the relevant order by the Minister of Legal Affairs. Mr. Speaker, with all the oil money, consultancies, and experts available to the government after 4 years, not much has happened in legal affairs. The justice system is burdened with extremely limited support from this government. Mr. Speaker, the government risks misallocating funds leading to inefficiencies and perpetuating unmet social needs. The budget lacks measurement and is akin to a scientific experiment without controls, with results being arbitrary.
Control from this side, honorable member says you'll need to get 5 minutes to conclude.
Comrade Speaker, I do move that the honorable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip for the opposition. Honorable member, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the budget lacks measurement, which is akin to a scientific experiment without controls, results being arbitrary and conclusions lack empirical grounding. The action by the government is a fundamental deviation from the principles of evidence-based government. It can only shape a narrative of fiscal opaqueness, inefficiency, wastage, and a missed opportunity for real social economic progress. In the world's fastest growing economy, the 1.146 trillion budget is devoid of a plan that would provide social and economic upliftment for the small man, workers, pensions, youth, and traditional business. This is a budget that panders to the friends, family, and favorites of the PPP. Mr. Speaker, this nation's founding fathers and mothers, Hubert Tutania, Critchlow, Chedi Jagan, Forbes Burnham, J.P. Lakshman Singh, Janet Jagan, Peter Degar, Jane Phillips Gray, would weep at the vast inequalities and inequities that exist in this society and the contempt for ordinary people and businesses. We urge a rethinking of this budget that undoubtedly opens the floodgates to exclusion, waste, fraud, and abuse. Mr. Speaker, this House is reminded of the advice given on the 16th of January, 1964, during the budget debate where the honorable member Forbes Burnham, as he then was, said, the opposition's coalition proposals will be made very clear during these debates. We say to you that the problems in Guyana are not the problems of the PPP or the problems of one section of the community, but the problems of the Guyanese people. And if we understand that and face this problem in this spirit, I'm sure that a more realistic attitude will be brought to the problems of this country. And that instead of sniping and sneering at those who fight to improve the economic and social position of Guyana, we should devote our efforts to abolishing the reason for our backwardness, poverty, and degradation. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very, very much, honorable member. And you did display a great example of how persons can switch into appropriate language. And now for the Honorable Minister of Labor, the Honorable Joe Zeph Hamilton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, whilst the Honorable Roysdale Ford was speaking, I reflect on a movie I saw some time ago. The name of the movie is The Shadows. It's about a notorious cabal who in the movie people refer to them as a band of brigands, some of the most corrupt crooks. And I'm speaking about a Mr. Speaker. I'm speaking about the movie, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm speaking about a movie I saw. This cabal of men and women, they're vile, vicious, and venomous. They relish in profanity, but at the same time, Mr. Speaker, they present themselves with pretense. The shadows. That they're the moral barometer of the corporate republic of them. That they're the most upright citizens. Mr. Speaker, what is also noteworthy of this movie is that it had 31 characters acting in a movie. Very noteworthy. And so, Mr. Speaker, the speaker before me, he said this, and I repeat. He said, citizens live their experience. And he's so right. Between 2015 and 2020, the citizens live their experience, governed by the APNU AFC, and that is the reason why, after one term, they kicked them over to the opposition.
That's right. The worst government afterwards. The worst afterwards.
I want to show the Guyanese people briefly about an experience. This experience is 4 ministers of the government granting to themselves scholarships.
Yes.
One case, Annette Ferguson, 2.6 million Guyana dollars. I did the calculation.
Yes. Some
of these calculations are US and some are pounds. $2.68 million. Annette Ferguson.
Yes.
Nicolette Henry.
Yes.
$10.4 million.
Former Minister Nicolette.
Tabitha Sarabalo.
Former
Really? And I'm told, Mr. Speaker, I did not know that the honorable member, she find me very cute, I'm told. I'm told that she said that some time ago. $2.68 million.
Yes.
One child of a minister,
Yes.
Simona Broom, $46.8 million Guyana dollars.
Yes.
Another child of one minister, Simona Brooms, $28.1 million.
Yes.
People live their experience.
And the ordinary people didn't get scholarship.
And so,
Ordinary people didn't
if you look at, and the honorable member just spoke about people being exposed to development and training. If we look at technical vocation, education, and training, the average cost
Mr. Speaker.
to train a person in a
Chief Whip for the opposition is standing on a point of order.
Yes, sir. Comrade Speaker, and your guidance, the honorable member is making reference to former ministers by name who are not in this house.
These are public matters. These are public matters.
Minister Labor.
Yes, sir.
I don't think you have the designation as speaker. So please, he's speaking to me. Allow me to answer. Okay? Yes, Ms. Honorable Member Jones.
So that is the point, Comrade Speaker.
Thank you. Point of order, he's making reference to facts he has, and he has to lay that over. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, just a note. These people live their experience. Mr. Speaker, People live their experience. $28.1 million. The sum total of this is that 4 ministers and their family, they utilize $90.8 million Guyana dollars. In the case of Annette Ferguson, she could have trained 18 persons in TVET.
Yes.
In the case of Nicolette Henry, she could have trained 70 persons in technical vocational education and training.
Yes.
In the case of the honorable member who find me very cute, she could have trained 18 persons. One of the children of the minister, she could have trained 315 persons.
Wow.
And the other child could have trained 189 persons. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, that 610 Guyanese were denied training by 5 ministers of the previous government. And they come to this noble house with all kinds of pretense that they care about the Guyanese people. People live their experience, Shadows.
That's right.
People live their experience. And this is just one example of people living their experience. So when you come in your pretense and your crocodile tears, the Guyanese people have not forgotten. The Speaker, they will never forget you. Because they from their experience.
Mr. Hamilton,
Yes, sir.
we have a member on.
A point of order, Mr. Speaker. I find it distasteful that we have in this National Assembly. It is unacceptable.
Honorable members again, and you'll get back your time, honorable member, Mr. Hamilton. Honorable members again, a person standing on a point of order, the relevant standing order, you only have 2 options. If it is gross misinformation and you have the facts, let it be known. But on clarification and you responding, I don't allow it. Good. Honorable members.
Mr. Speaker.
You've been warned. Honorable member, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, it must inform the nation that the fact that you have this excitement in the opposition benches, it means that they're touched. Because people live their experience as indicated by Honorable Roysdale Ford. You know, and Mr. Speaker, the honorable member, Mr.
Honorable member, hold a second. Hold a second. Opposition Chief Whip, I urge you constrain some of your members on your side. I am hearing an honorable member to my left shouting on parliamentary, shouting, not heckling, shouting, okay, on parliamentary words. Go ahead, honorable.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Now I have gotten the attention of the shadows. During the period 2020, Mr. Speaker, to 2023, The Board of Industrial Training has engaged a total of 11,275 beneficiaries through the implementation of 549 projects across the regions of Guyana. We didn't give ourselves scholarships. We didn't. We didn't give ourselves scholarships, 610 children. 10 children. Through the project implementation, training was done in occupational areas such as welding and fabrication, heavy-duty equipment operation, plumbing, general construction, commercial food preparation, electrical installation, fiber optic technology, tract operation and maintenance, small engine repairs, AC and refrigeration, photovoltaic installation and repairs, and early childhood development, to name a few. 4,283 males and 6,992 females received training between 2020 and 2023 under the People's Progressive Party. No minister nor their kids. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, the government has invested $982,108,000 in the lives of Guyanese through skilling, upskilling, and reskilling through TBET programs. Again, we did not. This is your legacy. $90 million that could have trained 610 young people who needed training. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, testimonials. Mr. Speaker, I stand before you today to underscore remarkable impact of the Board of Industrial Training Programs as we deliberate the 2024 budget. The successes of BIT beyond the mere issuance of certificates have left an indelible mark on the lives of the countless individuals, including beneficiaries like Mistress Anita Ganpat, Mr. Noel Haynes, and Miss Kimberly Kisoon. And these are their testimonies. In recognizing the transformative influence of BIT, it is imperative to acknowledge the fact that the BIT program serves as a motivational pillar, propelling participants towards success beyond the classroom. The comprehensive program, extending beyond technical skills, has equipped beneficiaries with essential life skills such as business approaches, workplace safety, and language proficiency. Mr. Speaker, allow me to share the inspiring story of Mistress Anita Ganpat, a mother at the age of 48. This is her testimony. A trainee from Zeeburg, West Coast, Demerara, who highlighted that I can now stand on my own feet after completing Board of Industrial Training Garment Construction course. She further stated, I am never out of work as a seamstress now. Sometimes I have to start from 2 a.m. in the morning till late at night. The government and BIT has helped me to stand on my own. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Noel Haynes, a retiree from New Amsterdam, Borbis, who reskilled himself in BIT small engine repairs course as he always wanted to learn a trade, he says. His advice to fellow retirees is keep the brains active. Keep the brains active, Mr. Ramjatan. There is always a chance to continue your studies as you're older with less distraction. Mr. Speaker, last but not least, Ms. Kimberly Kisoon, a 26-year-old Lindoner, graduated from BIT Commercial Food Preparation and is now a proud business owner of KK Corner Snacker, located in Christiansburg, Brazil. Mr. Speaker, she has stated, this course has changed my life to make me my own one. Mr. Speaker, as we deliberate budget allocation, we recognize the pivotal role of the Board of Industrial Training in shaping the destinies of individuals like Ganpat, Ains, and Kisoon. Mr. Speaker, the government I represent prioritize and will continue to support the Board of Industrial Training, and we implore the Assembly at large to do the same. Don't give yourself scholarships, train the people. Mr. Speaker, this investment, and I heard some fanciful noise to my left. You know, people live their experience. Presently, we have about 30 young people being trained to participate in the oil and gas economy. This is not gap. You could go there at Port Morant and see it.
Go there and see it.
See it in 3 years. Of course, up no AFC, the shadows over there will say, y'all take away our program. Every project is theirs.
But if you do it,
Every project belongs to them.
but if you do it,
They never conceptualize it.
study. The shadows.
The bridge, it is our project. Whether it's a Demerara Bridge or Linden Bridge, it's our project. And oh, I don't know how you have the temerity to speak about the Demerara Harbor Bridge. When you, APNO AFC, with all the intellect and capacity, they would have been the first government that erected a three-lane bridge in this world. All the capacity, all the intellect the shadows have. They would have put us in the Guinness Book of World Records. A three-lane bridge. And Honorable Royce talked about how qualified and competent they are, but they were bringing a three-lane bridge. Mr. Speaker,
That they were consultative.
permit me to highlight the key achievements, Mr. Speaker. We have the National Training Project for Youth Empowerment and the training of individuals from other specific population subgroups and projects such as persons with disabilities, women in trade, and the Basic Need Trust Fund. The implementation of these programs resulted in 4,439 persons being engaged and trained by BIT in 2023. Those are persons who didn't have the skill. You know, we could have done like you all. We could have done like you all, give ourselves scholarships and our sibling scholarships and fail to train the people. Mr. Speaker, 3,230 youths commenced training during 2023 across all administrative regions of Guyana in 50 occupational areas. Also, 235 persons with disabilities also received training through the Board of Industrial Training through this cycle. Additionally, BIT collaborated with the BIT Basic Needs Trust Fund to offer heavy-duty equipment operation to 3,312 beneficiaries. However, Mr. Speaker, moreover, it is befitting for me to highlight that of the individual trained during 2023, BIT engaged 638 females in 21 non-traditional areas as electrical installation, 150, AC refrigeration technician 15, heavy duty equipment operator 165. we did not give ourselves scholarship. Mr. Speaker, let me further state that we as a government that keep our promises, in this regard, in keeping with the government manifesto promise to enhance opportunity in TVET through the BIT, TVET programs were implemented in all administrative regions. Additionally, residents of the hinterland regions and riverine communities, respectively in Region 1, 5, 7, 8, and 9, Region 2, 3, and 6, accounted for 20% of the persons trained during 2020. 881 total beneficiaries, 390 males and 491 females. Mr. Speaker, we continue also to implement the National Apprenticeship Program. During 2023, 233 apprentices were engaged under the National Apprenticeship Program at 3 master plants, namely Gaisuku, Busai, and the Guyana Industrial Training Center. Mr. Speaker, this is a significant increase because the last full year of the APNU AFC in government, they only allowed for 60 individuals to be engaged in apprenticeship program. 60. Mr. Speaker, yes. Mr. Speaker,
as you're waiting to get your thoughts together, let's have an extension so you can conclude.
Extension? Oh, man.
Mr. Speaker, I thought you said you were giving him back some time, so I wasn't.
I actually gave him back 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Can I therefore ask that the honorable member be given 5 minutes extension to conclude his presentation?
Thank you, Honorable Minister. You have 5 minutes to conclude.
Mr. Speaker, occupation, safety, and health. I can report that when we took government, 32 persons died in the last year the APNU FC was in government. I can report to this assembly that in 2023, that was reduced by some 37% under the People's Progressive Party civic government. We have moved from a complement of officers of 9 under the APNU AFC to today to 30, and we have established offices in all the different regions across Ghana. All of them. Mr. Speaker, labor. Mr. Speaker, do you know that it was under the APNU AFC that the average rate of reporting was 64%? Today, under the People's Progressive Party civic government re-established Ministry of Labor, we have moved from 85%, we have moved from 64 to 85%. And importantly, Mr. Speaker, we have recovered in 3 years, Mr. Speaker, $160 million for employees owed by employers.
Honorable Minister, give me 1 minute. I made a miscalculation.
I know you made a miscalculation. I know that. I did not speak for 30 minutes.
Are you speaking to me or your colleagues?
No, I'm speaking to my colleague, Vikram Bharat.
So you actually started at 10:54, and folks, that clock is 2 minutes behind my time. And you had 3 minutes of interruptions. So you should be finished at 10:27 plus 5. At my time, you have now still 12 minutes to go. Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, moving on. We have recoup for employees $160 million in 3 years. Just last year, $69 million we have recouped. And you know what? For the shadows, some of these matters were outstanding matters that they left between 2015 to 2020. Mr. Speaker, in 2023, we had a 14% decline in complaints received when compared to 2022. Mr. Speaker, this is evidence that the ministry's policies, programs, and initiatives are efficient, effective, and working. On the APNU AFC in 2015, when they took up office, the number of complaints to the Labor Department increased by 51%. The first 3 years in office, there were 5,497 complaints. PVP first 3 years in office, we received 3,103 complaints from workers, representing an almost 50% less than what they received. Mr. Speaker, this was because of our proactive measures with numerous awareness sessions, working with our social partners to ensure the workers' rights are protected, a significant manifesto promise. Mr. Speaker, we continue to conduct regular workplace inspections in all of the regions to ensure that companies and businesses comply with the legislative requirement. Mr. Speaker, we continue to conduct regular workplace inspection in all of the regions to ensure that companies and businesses comply with the legislative requirement governing conditions of work, with a view of achieving decent employment and working conditions. In 2023, we conducted more than 2,700 inspections. Of significant importance was that through our inspection activities, we were able to file charges against 2 employees for paying their employees below the national minimum wage. Mr. Speaker, the APNU AFC conducted 6,685 inspections in their 5 years. We have, in less than 4 years, conducted 6,872 inspections. Furthermore, our inspection activities in 2023 allow for us to reach or cover more than 15,000 workers. Mr. Speaker, we are a government that cares about the workers of this country. We did not give ourselves scholarships. On the issue of child labor, Mr. Speaker, the elimination of child labor in all of its forms is imperative and verily a top priority for the Ministry of Labor. In 2023, a series of awareness events were conducted to raise awareness about the detrimental emotional and physical effects that child labor and forced labor can experience. Sensitization sessions were held in more than 14 villages and communities, especially in the hinterland. Mr. Speaker, presently we have one child labor matter in front of the courts. Mr. Speaker, we also continue to play our part in ensuring that there's a stable industrial relations climate in this country, Coretta McDonald. From 2021 to 2023, the Labor Department received a total of 54 requests for conciliation from both employers and trade unions. And Mr. Speaker, the Labor Department, through the Chief Labor Officer, we have been able to have these issues addressed with the parties at the conciliation stage. Mr. Speaker, I must add that when I took office, there were many unresolved matters in the ministry and the Trade Union Recognition Board. Employers were refusing to meet and treat with a union representative during the APNU tenure. Mr. Speaker, needless to say, we were able to bring the parties to the table, and we have had those matters resolved. Concluding with collective labor agreements, Mr. Speaker, from 2021 to 2023, we have come to sign 54 collective labor agreements, a strong indication that good faith collective bargaining is alive and well. Mr. Speaker, prosecution. In 2023, we filed 32 matters in the magistrates court, and we closed 2023 with 11 of those cases being active or ongoing in the courts. They are at different stages in the legal proceedings. We are able to get judgment or settle the other 21 matters. As you're aware, Mr. Speaker, in July 2022, the government opened upon recommendation, from the National Tripartite Committee, we raised the national minimum wage via the National Minimum Wage Order in 2022. And of the 11 active cases, 2 are against employers for paying below the minimum wage. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, in keeping with our obligations under the Constitution of the International Labour Organization, we continue to submit reports to the ILO on the application of the respective conventions, both ratified and unratified. And Mr. Speaker, this obligation was neglected by the honorable members on the other side. When they were in government, we had to clear the backlog that they left and saved our country's image on the international plane by not allowing the committee of experts to flag Guyana for not reporting on its obligations. Mr. Speaker, our work will continue in 2024 with a view to further enhancing the quality and effectiveness of our services. In this regard, technological measures to improve accessibility, quality, efficiency, and effectiveness will be pursued. In 2024, digital complaint and inspection management system with mobile application will be implemented. This system would allow for real-time data which can be used to develop strategies and also to inform policymakers. Importantly, a user-friendly mobile application tailored for the public, workers and employers will be implemented where the users, that is the workers and employers, can easily report labor violation and complaints. The application will offer an intuitive interface with complaint submission, ensuring accessibility and inclusivity. Mr. Speaker, the co-op sector, a project started with the Attorney General Chambers, the Ministry of Housing, CHP, and the Ministry of Labor Co-op Department. What we have started is to ensure that every property owner in every co-op scheme in Guyana, they are issued transport and titles individually. Let me say that again. What you have presently those leases are en bloc. Again, they started it. You see, would never stop, they started it. Mr. Speaker, people have houses that are $100 million, $70 million property that are useless to them and their family presently because they cannot approach a bank to borrow money on that property. That we are bringing to an end with this program of ensuring every citizen who has a property in a POP scheme, we will ensure that you get your title or your transport that is to empower you so that you can utilize your asset. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, for the Honorable Comrade Ramdatan, in 3 years, 162 no objection letters were issued by the ministry to the CHPA Ministry of Labor. And as I speak to you, already scores of people, Mr. Ramjatan, they have already collected their transport and leases. Some of these are public matters. Mr. Speaker, in 2024, this number will skyrocket as a result of the action that will be taken by the Ministry of Labor in conjunction with the Ministry of Housing, and to ensure that all their titles and their transport. And Mr. Speaker, as I have said, Mr. Speaker, when I started, that nothing that the shadows they do or say will change the direction of the government and the nation. Upward, 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 upward. You could talk about friends and family. All week last week, I saw hundreds of people collecting their lands. Is that friends and family? Yes, it's our friends and family.
Our friends and family.
Is that friends and family? Yes, they're friends and family. Mr. Speaker, 600, 200 or 300 persons. Is that friends and family? Yes, they're friends and family.
Yes.
And so, Mr. Speaker, we are not deterred by the baseless accusation every year it comes about a budget that is for friends and families. Oh, Guyana, they are our friends and families. That is the reason why we have, and we will continue to enact policies. We will stay the course to ensure that our friends and families, they benefit and develop themselves individually and collectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And now for the Honorable Member, Ms. Jurita Fernandez.
Only you alone. Nobody else. You alone. You alone. Guys, both. Nobody else. Nobody else got children. Nobody else got children. Your children get scholarships, and that was the problem. And people children.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with a budget that the Honorable Member, Dr. Ashley Singh, presented in this House, touted to be the best budget the PPP could have presented. That's how they coined it. I would have believed that the Honorable Member, Mr. Joe Hamilton, would have actually come and give rationality and to project the many benefits of this budget. But his presentation brought me back to one line I saw in one of our reporters actually quoted. And he said, every clown needs a circus. And Mr. Speaker, this house is not a circus. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member, Mr. Hamilton, spoke extensively about the Twelfth program. And you would believe that the Twelfth program is doing so well. Mr. Speaker, if the honorable member used some of that energy and bravado to actually execute the work of his ministry, the building in Bartica that is on the third contractor would have been finished now. If the honorable member used any of that energy when he is planning for these programs, students would not complete these programs, but have to be left waiting because, oh, the money finished and they ain't got no more money to execute the graduation ceremony for the program. Mr. Speaker, when they are talking about training programs, they must also equally address unemployment. And the only mention of unemployment, actually it was not even mentioned in Ashley Singh's presentation, honorable member. The only mention when it comes to job creation in budget 2024 was to say that, oh, we will extend the part-time job program. We're going to have $10 billion put aside there. So guess what? 20,000 of you that are unemployed, we can give you all a little top up. We know can't do anything for y'all at the end of the month. That is not planning and that is not policy decisions that any economy should be following through. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2024 is the fourth budget that is presented by the PPP that is being carried by oil revenues, standing at $1.146 trillion. This year's budget covers all 5 of the non-oil budget presented by the APNU-AFC administration from 2015 to 2019. So surely, Guyanese had high expectations for budget 2024, but we are staying the course. Mr. Speaker, it is therefore important for us to analyze the PPP's course that they have been on, and more importantly, the course that they intend to stay. Let us look at wages and salaries. Governments are nothing without public servants. So naturally, any caring government would make sure that public servants are taken care of. And the most basic thing that is expected is as the economy grows, so does the wages and salaries for the public servants in Guyana. Between the year 2015 and 2019, the coalition government increased wages and salaries by 77% without 1 cent of oil revenues. To date, Mr. Speaker, the PPP since taking office in 2020, and Mr. Speaker, it's important to note that at the end of this budget year, the PPP would have spent $3.25 trillion since taking office in 2020. And with that sum, sir, they could have only stood, and it was announced in this house by the honorable member Ashley Singh, that we've increased wages and salaries by 23%. That is unacceptable for any government that is starting to be the masters at managing resources. This is not what the Guyanese people are expecting, and it is not what they deserve. They deserve better. Mr. Speaker, this increase does not do anything for the ordinary Guyanese who is struggling to make ends meet with the rising cost of food items in the market. It does nothing for the thousands of Guyanese who were forced to move from their homes in the outlying regions in search for jobs and now face astronomical increases in the prices in the housing market, as was identified by my colleague, Mr. Roysdale Ford. These thousands of people are now forced to consume and feed their families substandard meals because they simply can't afford a healthy meal. The thousands of people that are living in rent houses and apartments are now faced with the reality that they may not be able to afford to put a roof over their head. Mr. Speaker, all this is happening in an oil-rich economy with the first $1 trillion budget coming in at $1.146 trillion. This is a shame. Mr. Speaker, if the PPP is to stay the course, wages and salaries will be seeing an equally meaningless increase at the end of 2024. And the standard of living of the working class will be reduced even further. Mr. Speaker, it is important for us to examine debt, and the PPP seems to be a lover of debt. The government has put forward a budget with a deficit of $395 billion. The PPP, with their memory difficulties, might not remember, but it was when the PPP took office in 2020, there was an external debt ceiling of $400 billion. Not $400 billion per year, sir, $400 billion total. And the APNU AFC administration never met that $400 billion ceiling, and they never saw the need to. They executed and they managed efficiently without adding a debt burden on the backs of the ordinary Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, in this one budget, the PPP is adding almost the same amount of debt as the total external debt ceiling prior to 2020. The PPP is spending everything they can put their hands on and more. No interest in improving the lives of the ordinary Guyanese. The total lack of planning for the long-term well-being of the state suggests that the PPP does not believe they will be in office for much longer. And this we can agree with, sir. In this single one-year budget, the PPP will be adding a debt burden of $1.8 million on every Guyanese household.
Wow.
Okay. To break it down further, sir, they will be adding a debt burden of more than $500,000 on every Guyanese.
That's right.
So in an oil-rich economy, sir, instead of creating a pathway to sustainable prosperity for Guyanese, the PPP has decided to shackle every man, woman, and child with a debt burden there seems to be no light at the end of this tunnel. Sir, for every child that will receive a $40,000 Because We Care cash grant, they will be equally receiving Because We Do Not Care more than $500,000 debt burden, compliments of the PPP administration. Mr. Speaker, so it would be prudent for the honorable member, Mr. Hamilton, to tell Ms. Anika and Ms. Bissoon that after they were trained and the minimum wage is not being increased, now they are put in an economy that they will be struggling, and not only struggling, but they will be struggling with a government-imposed debt burden of over $500,000 on their backs.
Right.
Mr. Speaker, and if this is not bad enough, the PPP has signaled their intention to come back to the House and to increase not only the domestic and the external debt ceilings, but to also pass legislation to withdraw more money from the Natural Resource Fund than is currently allowed. The Natural Resource Fund, sir, will now be used to finance projects that will fail to get loan approvals because the projects lack the basic requirements for loan approvals. Case in point, sir. After failing to secure the loan for the gas to energy project because they could not present proof that it is feasible, the PPP administration now plans to utilize the Natural Resource Fund to actually execute that project, sir.
That'll be another skill then.
Mr. Speaker,
Another skill then.
important to note that when calculating the debt burden, I used the figures that's from the Bureau of Statistics that stated the 2023 mid-year population number at 778,400 persons. Mr. Speaker, I did not use the inflated number being touted by the Honorable Member, Mr. Barajagio, that is never here. I did not use that number that he is claiming that the PPP administration is working with a population number of 1 million persons. And it is important to note, sir, that when the PPP budgets using an estimated population at 1 million people, and then they come back to this house at the end of the year and they say, oh, we have expended all the monies. Where is the money going?
It is checked.
Where is the money going? Because according to the Bureau of Statistics, sir, they are inflating that number by more than 220,000 persons. These are the real questions that we need to ask in this house today. Though these numbers are alarming, they are even more alarming when we remember that the PPP plan to stay the course. So we will expect a higher debt burden coming in the future. This is criminality, as my colleague puts it over. Mr. Speaker, we must look at the overdraft, sir. It is extremely important to look at the overdraft. The PPP continues to be dishonest about the overdraft, and more particularly, the overdraft that they inherited. This is the third budget, sir, that was presented in this house, in which the Honorable Member, Mr. Ashley Singh, dishonestly stated that the domestic debt ceiling.
Three times I could have interrupted you, but you have to right now, you have to withdraw dishonest. You're imputing.
The
right?
ingenious would suffice, sir.
So go ahead, let's get your presentations going good so far.
Thank you, sir. He's economical with the truth, sir. Sir, the budget stated, and I quote, the growth of domestic debt service payments was due to a full year's worth of principal repayments on debentures issued in 2021 to securitize an inherited overdraft at the central bank. End of quote. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member Ashley Singh uses the word inherited because he wants to convey an image that the coalition did not know how to manage the resources of the nation. But allow me, sir, to give some clarity and bring truth to light on this matter. Mr. Speaker, it was in this very house, the Honorable Ashley Singh was asked what was the overdraft the 2nd of August, 2020, when the PPP took office. And he responded and said, and I quote, the end of December 2020 overdraft balance $116.6 billion on the consolidated fund account represents a deterioration of $47.9 billion compared to the 2nd of August 2020 overdraft of $78.7 billion. End of quote. Mr. Speaker, the APNUAFC coalition had an accumulated overdraft of $78.7 billion over 5 years. The PPP government, sir, racked up an overdraft of $47.9 billion in their first 5 months in office. But that doesn't end there, sir. The domestic debt repayment that Dr. Singh, honorable member, is referring to speaks to an overdraft of $200 billion because the PPP, sir, further racked up the overdraft. And on the 28th of May, 2021, they issued $200 billion of debentures to cover this overdraft. So in 9 months of the PPP being in office, they were responsible for an overdraft of $221.3 billion. So the PPP can't come here in this house and speak about an inherited overdraft, sir, when they are responsible for $121.3 billion in overdraft in a 9-month period, sir. Those are the facts. Mr. Speaker, although the PPP has stayed the course and continue to misrepresent the facts about the overdraft, the evidence cannot be overturned. Mr. Speaker, as we look at Budget 2024, it is important for us to do a comparison as to what happened under the coalition and what is happening under the PPP. If one listens to the honorable member Ashley Singh's report on the sector's performance, you would believe that the PPP is doing a great job at managing the economy, while the APN UAFC administration did a poor job at managing the economy. However, this is far from the truth. So allow me to do a comparison, sir, of the management of the economy under the APN UAFC administration as compared to the PPP administration. And to be fair, sir, I will do a comparison between the coalition's last full year in office, which is 2019, and the PPP's last year in office, 2023.
Hi, Gail, be quiet.
Mr. Speaker, let us examine 6 sectors: sugar, timber, shrimp, bauxite, rice, and gold. And the foreign earnings received in this country by each of those sectors, sir. Let's start at sugar. The PPP love to do comparisons, so Mr. Hamilton, this is for you. It was reported that the sugar growing sector is estimated to have grown by 28% in 2023. Sounds good, right? In 2019, the foreign earnings from sugar was $27.7 million, while in 2023, the foreign earnings from sugar was $24.9 million. $2.8 million less was received in 2020 under the PPP stewardship than was received in 2019 under the APN UAFC administration. Those are the facts. Let us look at timber. The forestry sector is reported to have expanded by 5.4% in 2023. Yet in 2023, the foreign earnings from the timber sector was $20.5 million compared to $33.7 million in 2019 under the APN UAFC coalition. A difference, sir, of $13.9 million. Mr. Speaker, I hear the honorable member, Mr. Shearers, talking about gold. We're getting there, honorable member.
Hold your heart, please.
Let us look at shrimp, sir. Shrimp production was reported to have expanded by 61.1% in 2023. Anyone listening to this report from the honorable member Ashley Singh would think that the shrimp sector is doing better under the PPP than it was under the APN UAFC administration. But again, far from accurate. In 2023, the foreign earnings from shrimp was $61.7 million. And in 2019, wait for it, In 2019, it was $76.3 million US dollars.
Okay, now.
Under the PPP in 2023, the foreign earnings from shrimp was $14.6 million US dollars less than it was during the coalition's last full year in office in 2019. Those are the factual numbers. Bauxite now, sir. It was reported that the bauxite mining industry has contracted by 20.4% in 2023. In 2023, the bauxite mining industry's foreign earnings was $79.6 million US dollars. But when compared again, sir, to 2019, foreign earnings of bauxite was 127. Declined by $47.5 million US dollars under the PPP administration. Right, sir. During the budget presentation, we learned that the rice sector expanded by 8%. In 2023, the foreign earnings from rice was $211.7 million US dollars, while in 2019, the foreign earnings from rice was $222.9 million US dollars. Again, sir, a decrease now of $11.2 million US dollars in the rice sector. And for my friend, Mr. Shero, gold. The gold mining industry reported a contraction of 11.2% in 2023, resulting in the foreign earnings for gold being $808.6 million in 2023. In contrast, sir, in 2019, the foreign earnings from gold was $876.6 million US dollars. In short, the PPP is reporting that under their stewardship, the gold mining industry brought in $68 million US dollars less than the APN UAFC brought in 2019. Those are the facts. Mr. Speaker, those 6 sectors under the APN UAFC administration in 2019 brought in $158 million or 32.9 billion Guyana dollars more than the PPP did in 2023. The PPP is mismanaging these important sectors as they focus heavily on oil. And they are racing forward in the direction of the Dutch disease, and they don't like us to speak about that sort. Prudent management of the economy was well established under the APN AFC administration. You cannot come to this house and dispute those factual numbers, sir. So when I read the headline in the Guyana Times that stated, leading Guyana to prosperity required a Herculean task of correcting the APN UAFC's wreckage, I was convinced that the PPP is getting high on their own supply of propaganda. Mr. Speaker, the numbers don't lie. $42.9 billion more was received in foreign earnings in 2019 than in 2023 under the PPP. After 3+ years of the PPP in office, they cannot even bring these sectors back to the level at which the APN UAFC left it before they took office in 2020. So they cannot come to this house and try to lecture us about management of the economy. If the PPP stay this course, sir, it will mean that our country is in serious, serious trouble, particularly our non-oil sector. For those of you who don't know, the oil sector has an expiration date. Whether it be 20 years, whether it be 30 years that the world's largest oil exporters have targeted for their plan to become carbon neutral, the industry is not going to be a cash cow forever. When the children of today becomes the parents of tomorrow and have children of their own, what we have today for oil resources will not be available the same way for them. The importance of protecting the development of the non-oil sector cannot be overstated. And I have clearly outlined the best management of the non-oil sector was under the APNU AFC administration. In spite of this fact, rather, sir, we are now witnessing the contraction of every major sector this country isn't oil, rather, or is not directly dependent on oil. A textbook example of the Dutch disease. Safeguards which the coalition government had put in place to protect the state against Dutch disease are being dismantled. All oversight of the Natural Resource Fund gone. Saving being kept aside for future generations will be depleted with their management. But the Guyanese people can rest assured that when we return to office, the non-oil sector, the part of the economy which we all are a part of, the part of the economy that puts a roof over your head and food on your table, will be restored to prosperity as it was under the APNU-AFC coalition government prior to 2020. We will have to cure the PPP's Dutch disease. Mr. Speaker, when I excite Mr. Shearer, I know that I'm getting under her skin. Mr. Speaker, as we analyze the years of failure that has been characterized by the PPP's current term in office, we must take time to measure the opportunity cost of their mismanagement. So let us move our focus to the very important question of what could have been. In the period 2015 to 2019, the APNU coalition government, and this is in dire need of repetition, sir, spent a total of $1.2 trillion. After the budgetary period comes to an end, the PPP would have spent $3.25 trillion in the period 2020 to 2024. A difference of roughly 2 trillion Guyana dollars. And that's excluding, sir, the many supplemental papers that we know that they'll be bringing to the House during the course of the year. One can't help but wonder what this increased spending could have achieved, what it could have done for the ordinary Guyanese man and woman. $2 trillion, sir, if you break it down per Guyanese family, would bring you to 9.5 million Guyana dollars. It doesn't take anyone with a university degree to understand how life-changing $9.5 million would be to the ordinary Guyanese man and woman, and more particularly, sir, to the most vulnerable persons in society, some of which have to live and suffer the indignity of being in poverty. $9.5 million per family, sir, could have given them a decent roof over their head, a car to drive, sir, and with the coalition's policy position of higher education for free higher education for everyone at the level of the university, it would have made very well sure that their children and future generations would be lifting the standard of living. This is the Guyana that we should envision. Mr. Speaker, all this could have been done while maintaining the rapid infrastructure development program that characterized the coalition terms in office without a cent of oil money. This is the opportunity cost of having the PPP administration in office, sir. The resources needed to give every Guyanese the life they dreamt out is finally here. And under this PPP government, our people have nothing to show for it, while the PPP is expected to stay the uncaring course that they are on. Mr. Speaker, one would ask the question, why? Why is this so? Look at what could have been. Struggling Guyanese, let us ask this question and answer it. If the money was there to give every family a respectable home, then why are some families still squatting? If the money was there to give every family higher education, then why did students have to drop out of the university because they couldn't afford to pay the tuition? If Guyana is so wealthy, then why are thousands of families living in poverty today? The reason is simple, sir. The PPP does not see hard-working Guyanese men and women as the key agents for development. The PPP does not believe in investing in people. Even after years of using the failed policy of the trickle-down economics, the PPP still sees the economies as a collection of businesses because they love to secure their crony contractor class, as my colleague so nicely coins it. Again, I must remind the PPP, as I did last year.
Let me remind you, time is up. We will need an extension.
Thank you, Comrade Speaker. I do move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude her presentation.
Thank you, honourable member.
Sir.
You can proceed to conclude.
As I remind the PPP administration, an economy is a total product of the collective efforts of hardworking men and women. And it is only by empowering these hardworking Guyanese that we will see and realize the Guyana we all dream of. Because the Guyana we dream of can only be built by their hands, sir. Investing in health, education, and living standard of the Guyanese people is the only path to sustainable economic success. In his presentation, Dr. Ashley Singh spoke about those who generate prosperity will be those who adopt a comprehensive approach to developing their entire household balance sheet. Self-improvement, sir, educational accomplishment, and hard work must be the pillars of prosperity. Prosperity must not depend on the ability to leverage large amounts of money to make investments. Your most powerful wealth building tool, sir, is your income. For the average working Guyanese, this remains a small and insufficient sum. Yet the PPP is telling Guyanese to leverage their meager income to invest in risky business ventures. Sir, investing money you don't have because of the confidence in steady increasing property value, as the PPP is touting, is literally the economic mismanagement that created the 2008 global financial crisis, sir. Yet in spite of the many dangers of borrowing against inflating property values, the PPP minister responsible for finance stood in this National Assembly and said, those who generate prosperity will be those who adopt a comprehensive approach to deploying their entire household balance sheet. Being reckless with the nation purse, sir, is one thing, but advising Guyanese to be reckless with their meager purse is a whole new load. Guyanese must know that under the coalition government, those who generate prosperity will be the thousands of Guyanese who work hard and honestly. Under the coalition government, those who generate prosperity will be those who invest in educating their children with university education absolutely free, sir. Under the coalition government, those who generate prosperity will be those who grab at every opportunity for self-improvement and development, and not those who are called into meetings at the dead of night to cut backroom deals, sir. Yes. Because we believe that the hardworking man and woman is the core of Guyana's economic engine. Because we believe that making our workforce more productive is how we develop our economy sustainably, sir. Yes. We are not going to sit back and let the PPP run this economy down further than they have already done. Because we will invest in you and your children. Trickle-down economics have no place in Guyana's governance, sir. And in closing, sir, With the rising cost of living that Guyanese are facing, Budget 2024 has been the biggest disappointment from the PPP thus far. With old age pension and public assistance increasing by $3,000 and no increase in the minimum wage, the PPP government has proven time and time again that they do not care about any project or policy that would see the masses raising their standard of living and enjoying a better quality of life. Instead of a government of people, for the people, and by the people, we now have a government for some of the people, and we all know who those people are, sir. At the end of 2024, with the fourth oil budget, there will still be people living in the indignity of poverty in Tiger Bay, and Plastic City will still be there. 2020 to now has been a struggle. 2020 to now has been a struggle, sir. But I will say this, as a songwriter, Sam Cooke said, sir, it has been a long, long time coming, but I know a change will come.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. And now for the Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Public Works, the Honorable Indar Deodan.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity for me to give a few remarks on this budget. And well, normally when the opposition give their speeches, walk out. So where is my friend? Oh. Mr. Speaker, when I was a little boy, I had a habit of chewing my handkerchief. It is always a tasteless thing, but it's just a habit that I have. That presentation by the honorable member was just like chewing that handkerchief. It was tasteless. It was a tasteless presentation by the honorable member. It was like chewing a handkerchief. Try it sometime. Mr. Speaker, you know, sometimes I believe that the AP and UAFC think that the Guyanese people have goldfish memory. By the time we flip up in the year and we come back, we forget, but we don't forget. And allow me, during my presentation, to remind the APNU, every single one of them, and every single person that is watching this budget debate. I will first turn my attention to the Honorable Member Roysdale Ford, who spoke at the beginning of today's debate. And he quoted one Mr. Ram, Mr. Christopher Ram, somebody who I know in the accounting fraternity for many, many years.
Okay, Minister, just be careful using his name. You could maybe use his article, but not his name.
Well, they said so. I'm just reporting to what they said.
You're cutting into your own time.
Anyway, the article that the member quoted about Guyana will lose 100 million USD in 100 billion or 10% in inefficiencies. Well, I don't know where that mathematics came from or what justification they have to produce rather than an article that is quoted in this National Assembly. If any iota of evidence to show the inefficiency can be produced, let it be shown to the House, rather than quote an article that doesn't have any root in any study, in any of efficiency in Guyana, in efficiency of procurement, efficiency on execution. If the article has a basis in fact, produce the fact. Other than that, it is just designed for enthusiastic corruption of the public good. That is what it is designed for. And it's repeated in this honorable House. I also want to touch on the honorable member talking about trickle-down economics and waste, fraud, and abuse and slush fund. And these are the things that they use to describe the budget that we presented on behalf of the PPP government. And talk about a visionary roadmap. He spoke about a visionary roadmap, that the PPP don't have a visionary roadmap. Mr. Speaker, in any government, the wisdom, the collective wisdom of a cabinet, it is to the extent of what the leader sees, what the leader of the cabinet sees. And I am telling you, based on, Mr. Speaker, their government, their leader, David Arthur Granger, his vision, his roadmap was selling cook-up and fried rice and fish and chips. That is what he went and told the people. That is the vision and the roadmap that the APNU government will come here and tell us about having a roadmap. It was him who spoke it, not Indar. It was David Arthur Granger who spoke it. You can't unspoke that or unspeak that. You can't do that because he said it to people who wanted to hear about opportunities. Fish and chips and cook-up rice. That is the world vision of the APNU government. That is what they call a street view. That is not world view, that is street view. That is the roadmap that the APNU member spoke about. Come on, man. He spoke about poverty is pervasive. Poverty is pervasive. Mr. Speaker, I'm a man who study the Holy Book. I go to church on a Sunday to keep sane. Just to keep my foot on the ground, I try to go to church every Sunday to hear the pastor. Mr. Speaker, I know that in every single nation on earth, since the foundations of the earth, have poverty. Every single nation. Which one don't have poverty? Let any one of those bright scholars over there show it. Poverty will always be with you. It's how you address it is the difference between our government, which I will show you just now, and when they were in government. I'll show you just now. He spoke about UG 4.1 billion and compared to the gold scholarship and talk about the gold scholarship. I mean, I'm not going to rehash what my comrade Joe, the honorable member, spoke about. But the gold scholarship gave 21,442 Guyanese a chance of an education. 21,442 Guyanese from all walks of life, every part of this country. Every part. And you are going to cuss that in this honorable house? You are telling that 21,442 people you don't deserve that? Who are we in this house to say that? Our job when we were elected is to make sure we enhance people's lives, and the only way through that is education. If a man was born and raised in poverty, his only chance out of that is via education. I am one that is standing here as evidence of that, that education can take you out of poverty and bring you so that you can address this honorable house on the budget before the country. I am evidence of that. He said the budget lacked consultation. I don't know which rock the honorable member crawl out of. I don't know which tomb just break out and they just crawl out of the tomb. I will tell you, the Manufacturers Association issued statements because they had consultation. The Private Sector Commission issued statements. The Chamber of Commerce of Industry, over 1,000 members they have, issued a positive statement. The Upper Canteen Chamber, the Barbies Chamber, the Regency Chamber, all of the chambers, the Essequibo Chamber, the Badminton Association, the Squash Association, everybody issued statement on this budget because they were part of the process. And he now crawled out of a rock and said, oh, there was no consultation. He just crawled out of a rock out, he too and crawl out. Yes. Yeah. And this honorable member, Honorable Ford, came to this house and spoke about the Constitution and adhering to the Constitution and appointment of Chancellor of the Judiciary. He has the gall, the straight face to come to this honorable house and talk about upholding the Constitution when they were squatting in office for 5 whole long months. He led the fight to go to the court over and over, as they say in the countryside, goatee and Wandal, till they end up with something called res judicata, because they're trying one case over the next. But the same issue, I got the AG laughing there now. Him to the AG find it funny. That gentleman who the honorable member for, he was the one who was leading the fight to keep illegal government in office, squatting. And he come here to lecture us about constitution and adhering to constitution. We don't need a lecture from that particular member. Maybe the younger members who weren't part of it can come here and talk about that. But not him.
When he ever win the petition, then he could come.
Mr. Speaker, he spoke, I will rebuke every liar, every mistruth, every misguided information that was spoken in this house. Mr. Speaker, they're talking about poor and vulnerable, the Honorable Ford. I'll come to my friend, Ms. Jurita, just now with her, that crazy mathematics that came out. But let me deal with Ford first. Mr. Ford said that this budget does not cater for the poor and the vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, there was something under 2015 to 2020 government under the AP and UAFC that I refer to the great turning away. They turned their face away from the poor and the vulnerable. And I'll tell you how they did. The first thing that they did was introduce about 200 hardship measures. We call it hardship measures because that is what it is. You don't tax fertilizer, herbicide, and pesticide to grow food. They didn't do that is what is a hardship measure. They talk about the poor and the vulnerable, the elderly folks. Mr. Speaker, they tax the elderly folks. The water that you used to pray and say namaz and pray and cook food and feed the churches who feed the vulnerable, the water that you use, they put on VAT on it. Imagine they're taxing the thing that you use to wash your hand and clean yourself to go and pray in the morning. Yeah. That is what they're talking about. The vulnerable and the poor, water, like they remove the subsidy from the light. And water. That is what they do, and they are coming to talk about poor and vulnerable. Every single thing under the sun they tax. To all the fees they increase. Everything the balalacha, anything? Balalacha. Everything the tax. Not more pushing the tax. The Oscars. The Oscars man they increase the fee. The younger people in here don't know that, but the previous finance minister, I think he's wake up every morning. Minister Majority, sorry, he's not here to defend himself. He used to wake up every morning and say, where are we going to tax you, Mr. Granger? Where are we going to tax today? I'll tell you what else they tax. They tax education, developmental things. Okay, got some students over there. Education, I was president of the chamber at that time, run number your office and abuse you out for it. How are you going to tax development? You want the country to raise up dunces? You want the country to raise up dunces? You can't shame. It was a shameful thing they did. Listen to me. The Irfan Ali administration did not put no people inside his government. He put up educated people. He put up educated people in his house to defend this budget. So don't bring those things to us here. They tax food. Imagine he's talking about poor food. They tax food, things like butter. They tax butter. You can't even talk to your girlfriend and your boyfriend long. They tax the data. They tax the data. It's food. Bread, Mr. Speaker, bread. People don't know how bread is made. They got flour and they got something in shortening that's going to it to make it. They tax the shortening. So the bread price gone up. So the people start making, rather than the bread be so long, they bring down the bread this size to maintain the price. That is what they're doing. They're talking about hardship measures.
I always wonder why the bread was small.
Mr. Speaker, they talk about Gaisuku. They talk about Gaisuku. And I'm glad the Honorable Ramjatan is here because he always come with 2 spare, 5 knife and every ammunition he could find to go after Gaisuku. But Mr. Ford spoke of Gaisuku. Mr. Speaker, I do walk house to house in this country. Every community I go, I walk, talk to people. I spoke to... There was one time when I was walking a place called Zealot North, and I saw an old man sitting in a corner on the step, and I saw a lady picking shrimps. She was picking shrimps. Be quiet, you might learn something. The lady is picking shrimps. So I asked if everything is okay. I had about 3 young ladies with me because they control the area and they were walking with me. We walked and we said, so I looked at the lady and the lady didn't raise her head. I said, what are you doing? Is it everything okay? She said, no. The lady continued to pick the shrimp. So I'm walking out now. And my comrade said, Minister, she does that for a living. So I walk in back. And I asked the lady, I said, ma'am, you picking shrimps to cook? She said, no, we just do this for work. So she's picking shrimps, butter bowl they call it, by butter bowl. They get $140 per butter bowl. And she's picking the shrimps. You can only pick at least 10, you can pick at most 10 of them butter bowls. So you're talking about $1,400 a day this lady can work. So look, next door I see a man. So I said, your husband work? And so she said, yes, but he get laid off. He used to work at Gaisuku. So I said, he doesn't do anything anymore? She says, no, because when crop come back, you're gonna go back. So this is what the workers in Gaisuku, this is not 6 billion number you're talking about. This is the lives you're talking about. That situation there, Mr. Speaker, was cascading across the country when they put over 7,000 people out of work. That is what it did to their family. It destroyed their family. And they come to this house and boast about it. That is the most shameful thing that the APNU ever did. And to have members like Mr. Ramjatan, you'll have your time to speak later, but I'm speaking now. Them come and defend throwing them people out of work. Wales, mangle iron. When you go to Wales, you look at the factories, mangle iron, plus the teeth of the mangle iron too. They stole the man, they give it to their friends. Destroy Wales, 1,700 workers on the bottom line. And they come to this house and talk about Gaisuku and talk about guys like it. Those are not people, those are Guyanese just like me and you. And they deserve every right to unemployment and a decent wage to mind your family. So when we bring figures to this house and say we're going to keep the industry alive, we're going to keep it alive. Because that's its people. They have children, they suffer the same way like we, they bleed the same way like we. They're not a different race, they're not a different culture, they're not a foreign entity, they are us. Mr. Speaker, I want to also turn to our good friend, Ms. Jurita Finance now. Mr. Speaker, she said in her words that the Right Honorable Dr. Singh lied about the budget deficit and the overdraft. I don't know which book she was reading or which report she was reading, but the Bank of Guyana had recording in creditors, the creditors balance. We're supposed to always be a credit balance because it's a creditor, a debit inside of there, which is owed to government of Guyana. Hidden in that, those account balances, hidden in there, $92 billion worth of off the book unauthorized spending that they had. It was not part of the consolidated fund. It was on the Bank of Guyana books, and they hid it. And what wasn't reported, and what happened, Mr. Speaker, is that it contracted the asset base of the Bank of Guyana. When you're looking for the money, you couldn't see where the overdraft was. They hid it. I took 3 analysts in the private sector, one as the president, and I found it, and I made it public. That is what they did. They hid the debt. So it's not showing up in the government books, it's on the Bank of Guyana records. My God. That is what our government had to come here and bring a legislation to carry up the debt ceiling, issue the treasury bills, have the debenture. That is what 11.4 million US increase in payments because of that debt. That's happened, we have seen. We inherited. So she's reading the wrong report. I don't know what kind of shadow finance minister I've been reading the wrong report. No way I've seen one. Mr. Speaker, it's there everywhere. You're going to quote the report. Go and check it. Go read it. Go and read it. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak a little about the comparison that the honorable member made. I want to know how much time I have left because I want to speak about something. Mr. Speaker, she compared sugar, forestry, shrimp, bauxite, rice, and gold. They use that comparison. Let me give you a comparison, Mr. Speaker. And then I'll come back to her and that garbage that she spewed. This year, and I have, it's not the 2024 budget, but the 2015 budget. The 2015 budget that the then Honorable Member Winston Jordan presented under the APNU fresh government. And I want to show you a figure. This is not me, this is our budget. This is not in our budget. I wasn't in theater for politics at that time. This year says, in this year, 2015, they put $39.4 billion as a total capital spend of the whole country. $39.4 billion. And this was the year that they say is the good life year. This is their capital spend. The rest is what they're eating and drinking. This is capital spend to build school, to build road, to build hospital, to build bridges, to do hospital. Every infrastructure, every ministry, $39.4 billion. Mr. Speaker, this money in an oil and gas economy that you have to prepare for a future. This, the next year it can go up. You want me to go to the next year? Because the next year it will go up, it move up by inches. So don't go there. Mr. Speaker, this is watching them. The two of them boys up here, the honorable members, I'm getting antsy. Let me finish. I wasn't disturbing your people when I was speaking. You might learn something.
You keep telling them.
Mr. Speaker, in the budget speech, you know how much you put for roads, community roads? Honorable Member Bishop, you'll be ashamed to know that they only put $544 million to build community roads in this country.
What?
Less than 16 roads you can get from that. Less than, if you take $20 million to build a community road, less than 16 roads you can get for that. How are you going to build a country with 16 roads? Come on, this is not me, this is your budget. You want exhibit? Mr. Speaker, I borrowed this from your parliament, but I'll give you the exhibit if you want. This is the fact. This is the record that they're talking about good life. That is theirs. You know what is ours this year? Just this year alone. Your whole country budget for miscellaneous road alone is $73.2 billion. Because we, in this government, care for the communities. We care for the children that we used to gotta walk in the month to go to school. We care for the farmers who have to fetch them planting on the back from come out from the dam. We care for them. That's why we're building the country. And we built over 4,000 roads since we came into this government. So when they talk about performance against APNU and workload management, it is chalk and cheese. It is chalk and cheese. You can't compare it. Hold on, man. Hold on, man. This is my presentation. You all remember you hold on. This honorable member Jurita Finance spoke about debt and debt management and management of the economy. Oh Lord, I sit down there, I have to drink a glass of water so my stomach don't turn. I have to sit down and my stomach don't turn. Mr. Speaker, the debt of any country, the debt burden is calculated by the debt over the GDP. So you call it a debt burden. It's a GDP, debt to GDP ratio. Your debt burden. It is 27%. It is 27%. The Honorable Minister Singh put it inside the document. She didn't read or she didn't compare. Because if you compare it to the rest of the Western Hemisphere, nobody, no country has a low debt to equity, debt to GDP ratio or tax burden as Guyana. Guyana is the lowest in ECLAC, is the lowest in the entire Western Hemisphere. And that is something that they could never achieve. So don't speak about debt and debt management and management of the economy. The debt, I saw Big and Kaicho News, them too, have ballooning debt of 44 billion. The debt stock of this country, gone back decades, we still paying for some of them old projects. It adds up. And it keeps adding, but it's only 3.8% of your total spend. 3.8, just divide 44 billion over 1,146 billion. You get it? 44 billion dollars over the total budgets of 1.1 trillion. And you'll get 3.8%. That is the smallest. When we took government, and Minister Ashton has normally come to this podium and said the same thing, there's 153 It was 100, your debt service ratio was 153%. It means for every dollar you earn, Mr. Speaker, you got to borrow 53 cents to pay, just servicing your debt. That is what we inherited from an APNU government, a PNC government at that time. But you know, in usual reptilian mode, the reptile changed its skin. So they now come with a different thing now. They know to manage the economy. They know to manage the economy. Remember, some reptiles change their skin all the time. PNC, PNCR, PNC1G, Guyana, APNU, AFC. Recently, I see community development groups at the last local government election. They're just changing all the time. Just changing all the time. In the usual reptilian mode, Mr. Speaker. But we have to call it for what it is. They don't know about managing any economy. I'll tell you how they don't know about managing it, how not to do. They do all the wrong things. They spend money in the wrong places. They spend money on current expenditure, recurring expenditure, all the time. They just carry up the normal running of ministries and agencies, nothing to do with capital formation spending and social formation spending. And let me tell you what this budget has inside to make sure that the entire world knows that this budget have everything that is good for Guyana inside. Good for Guyana. I made some notes on it. More for the boys. First, Mr. Speaker, they are talking about Guyana and the mismanagement of the economy. I don't know which economy in the face of this earth grows and have the tag and the title of fastest growing economy in the world, running at 23% this year, and next year projected to be 34+%. Who manages a bad economy like that? Are we crazy in this house? Is it the house of crazies? I don't think so, Mr. Speaker. This is an honorable house. 33% GDP, the fastest growing economy in the world. That sounds to you like mismanagement? That sounds like somebody just trying to find fault with something good. The global growth is subjected to decelerate by 1.5% when we are growing at 34%. The entire Europe bloc is seeing a reduction in growth. When they do the reports now in the ECLAC report, the economic reports, they pull out Guyana. You know why they pull out Guyana from the normal gang or the normal set of countries? It's because we are termed in mathematics what you call an outlier. The law of averages put everybody in one way, in one group, but we have to be plucked out and put separately because the growth is an outlier. It distorts the growth of the entire ECLAC region. So they pull it out one side and they put Guyana separately because that is how good we are doing. To have APNU comes, member parliament coming and saying that the economy is managed by, I don't know what to call that. I don't know if this is garbage at the Seat Hill Street the other day when I drive through in Alvarez Town, that the city hall have to go and clean up. Because it is plain garbage they're coming in and spew. And I'm sorry that she's left their house because I like to rebut them when they talk. Mr. Speaker, the entire LAC region will grow at 2.2%. You see what I talk about, the law of averages and the outliers? That is mathematics and that is how they do these reports. We should be proud to know that Guyana is treated and seen in that way by even the international financial institution who prepare the reports. Mr. Speaker, this budget, I had the opportunity to speak to some folks in Albaistong last Friday. And I was talking about the budget and what the budget have inside. And one of the groups or the groups of people in the country are vulnerable groups, the poor. Mr. Speaker, when I speak about the great turning away that the APNU did, I'll tell you now what it means. Mr. Speaker, in that budget, 205,000 children will receive $45,000 come 2024. 205,000 from all walks of life, every race, every creed. You know what they did? They turned the face from those people and said, we're not giving you the crash grant. The former president of Guyana said they can't afford it. How is it that the PPP government can afford it suddenly and increase it for 45? Huh? So yeah, I don't know, money 2015, 16, 17, 18. I was a producer of them. Y'all, that is their excuse for not having a heart. That is their excuse, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about something that is different. In every person, there's a value system. In every person, there's a value system. You care for certain things and you go after it. If the collective values system for the APNU is to deny children the right to little money, to help them buy uniform and take them to school to get a little education, they don't even deserve to be in opposition if that is the value system, because that is what it did. They took it away from children. They even deserve to be in opposition once yet a government. Mr. Speaker, in this budget, have about $70 billion. Whether it's for old age pension, and you know what they do, Mr. Speaker? They clock out the old age pension because they say, oh, it's a 3,000 year-on-year. Yeah, a 3,000 year-on-year increase. But they didn't realize that when we took government was 20,500 and it's now 36,000. Nearly double, 75% increase in the old age pension. But they decide to pluck that one out and say, okay, we're going to go after this one. We never talk about the other good things in the budget. But my job is to talk about the other good things in the budget. So the children that will get their crash grant, there will be 13,000 people in the tax bracket under 100 grand will now see they don't pay tax. But that's only what is recorded in the GRA system. There are a lot of people out there that pay people and it's not recorded in the GRA. They also will benefit from it. Huh? Yes, about supplement when they had the fees, right? Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about, apart from the old age pension, the survivors benefit that we have now. All of these things are geared to help the poor and the vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, they turn their face away from children, the older folks, public assistance program, all of them. We have a whole ministry run by Minister of India that deals with all of these things. All day, every day, all over the country, people are being looked at and they are given these benefits. They never used to do these things. Mr. Speaker, when you go out in the country and you walk the place, rather than sit like armchair generals in your office and do desk review, go out and meet people and you'll hear from them. And a lot of people are being helped by this government. We don't turn our face from the fatherless. We don't turn our face from the blind. We don't turn our face from the downtrodden. We embrace it and we put programs in place to help them. That is what this budget is delivering. That is what it is delivering. And you check every line of the budget and you will see it.
Okay, I check my time and I see you need an extension to conclude.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask for the honourable member to have 5 more minutes to conclude his excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, Honorable Member, Mr. Deodat Indar.
Mr. Speaker, I also want to raise the issue of drainage and irrigation. Drainage and irrigation will see $72.3 billion. Mr. Speaker, let me say this. Farmers in this country who mine the rest of this country in terms of producing the bora, the melange, the pumpkin, the squash, and the edo, and everything else, they need drainage and irrigation for increase in crop yield. If they don't have the drainage, the water going to flood the land, and the little that they have to sell very expensive. So the drainage and irrigation is designed to help the thousands upon thousands of farmers that we had to bring down the cost of food because the yield goes up. And that is what we are doing here. This is an entire section of our country that we are addressing. In the Honorable Minister Zulfikar, they talk about shrimp production and money we get for strip and rice. And that is I don't know if it's Jumbi mathematics or so, but what they need to know is that Guyana has been leading with food production in the entire region. There is what you call leadership. The president of this country, along with the ministers, leading that fight. We planted things we never planted before. We have planted things that we never planted before. Crops that we never even think about engaging in. We now engage in planting and having production out of it. That is what agriculture is doing for that segment of our population. Farmers have families too. Farmers have children too. Farmers need to pay and eat too. So you have to help them with fertilizer. We remove all of the taxes from the fertilizer, that their tax. Imagine you are taxing things that grow food for people to eat. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, the APNU taxing the very things for farmers to use to grow food for themselves eat and their children eat. Yeah. What more madness, economic madness you can conduct in a country than that? Herbicide and pesticide, they tax that too. Mr. Speaker, education, 135 billion.2 for education. That, Mr. Speaker, is investment in the next generation. All of us in here, we ain't gonna pass the mortality rate. Some of us might be lucky to transgress over for 65 to 70. The rest, we got to look to the next generation. We need to build a country that have bright people to deal with what the future will bring to us. The challenges of global warming, of disaster, of global hunger. We need people in this country to deal with those things. How do you do that? We have to train them. We have to put them in school. We have to build a country with a good knowledge stock. Not what they did. Not what they did. And tax people. And get a self-scholarship. Mr. Speaker.
And then complete the scholarship.
Mr. Speaker, 129.8 billion for healthcare. How else do you show love to a society other than caring for them when they're most sick? How else does a government express love to the people that elected them other than showing that when your child's sick, your auntie sick, your uncle, your grandmother, your chacha, whoever sick, that we got an hospital for you to go to, you're going to get free drugs. We are building the modern healthcare system in this country. This money is an expression of love to the people of Guyana. This is how you care for people. Through dealing with the healthcare. And the honorable, my friend and honorable member, Dr. Frank Anthony, is leading this. And is no better man to do the job. So I thank you very much.
Excellent.
Mr. Speaker, no, I'm done with you yet, Mr. Mahipal. Mr. Speaker, I want to also point to roads and bridges. Roads and bridges. The last one I left. Roads and bridges. $204.1 billion. Last but not least. Last but not least. Here want somebody said stupidness. I want you all go in the community and let the people break you all down. Excuse my language. For not building the road. Because you know what I did? In 2015, I had their budget. 60 road. 60 road. One community that we go to, we build more than 16 roads.
16 road and 16 road and 65.
You cannot erase the record of the APNU government in this country. No matter how much you scroll it, tear out the page. No, you can't erase it. It's there. And it's on the records. And I'll show them the records.
That's right.
204 billion for every community from Baltistan in this country will see development and has seen development. Because as I said, we built my good friend and partner in the Ministry of Public Works, over 4,000 roads, community roads, all of them, highways. All of the highways and the byways and the bridges, we're building them. Mr. Speaker, I know you have signaled that my time is up. I can spend another day at this podium, but I want to say that this budget that they presented, it belongs where it is, in the past. In the past, it should not, this and their government should never see the face of office again because of their philosophy. Their philosophy is limited, Mr. Speaker. The collective wisdom that they have is shortened. It is only 2-3 people make decision in their government. This government that we have is one that seeks counsel from every single minister. Every single public officer. That is how we operate. That is how we operate. Mr. Speaker, I will close by saying that the 2024 budget that was read out by the Right Honorable Member Dr. Singh is a budget for every strata of life in Guyana. Every strata of life. It addresses all of the problems we are facing. All of the problems we are facing in a various grouping of people, including building a country that when the foreigners come in here by the thousands, they see the country that everybody's talking about overseas, that is the #1 growing economy. They see that the country is revving with economic activity. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, before we break, a couple of housekeeping matters. I would like, whenever the speakers are at the podium, let us decrease the movement behind the speakers and in front, because many times the persons exiting on that side and that side of the house block the camera view, and we have a wide cross-section of people online also. So you have to ease yourself away to the exits, which are not covered by the cameras. Honorable members, we will return in an hour and 10 minutes at 2 p.m.